of applause to David and Rowan. Guys, please go round of applause. Hi, David. David, the stage is yours.
Kalimera, nice to be here. So, I am from the world of startups, people thinking big, how they can use technology to find new markets. And we're going to talk a bit more about the importance of story. How do you tell a story about this in a world where behaviour has become this? How do you sell this as a product when people are spending money on these kind of entertainment experiences? How do you personalize the tourist interaction with your organization when personalization, because of the accelerating speed of machine learning, is understanding the emotional expression of individuals, tracking deep data points? And going back to art and culture, how do you turn the static experience of visiting a famous place when only recently a bunch of scientists in Moscow have shown if you take any two-dimensional image using deep learning, you can show what it would have looked like in 3 dimensions. If Mona Lisa was on Instagram making videos, this is what it would have been. So things are moving very quickly, and this is the traditional story, and it's a compelling story, and it's a very attractive story. But I guess my message to you is you can't relax, because your customers' expectations, behavior, and processes of choosing and visiting a place are changing very quickly. And I look at the edge. I look at the people doing crazy things. I look at, people trying to reinvent flying. This is a company in Germany called Lilium that's made a vertical takeoff electric jet that there were a lot of doubters about. They've raised a lot of venture capital, but they're hoping to get to market. Just, how people are going to get to places. NASA, a whole bunch of other companies, working on hypersonic. This maybe at some stage soon will make distance a lot less relevant. Elon Musk and some of his crazy ideas to get you to the other side of the world in 30 or 40 minutes. What's this going to mean for our expectations of distance? And already, like mad science ideas like Hyperloops are becoming a reality. Hyperloop is already being built in the United Arab Emirates to get people between Dubai and Abu Dhabi at many, many hundreds of kilometers an hour. But people's behavior can't be ignored. This is a graph by Mary Meeker, who's an investor and an analyst who every year does her Internet Trends report. And it's worth watching over time how this changes. This is the number of hours an American adult typically spends every day on their screen. The green is the mobile, the silver in the middle is the desktop, laptop, the blue at the bottom is all sorts of other digital devices. In the last 10 years, we've gone from 2.7 hours a day on the screen to 6.3, so nearly 3 times as much time that we're not spending talking to our colleagues, having conversations in physical meetings, being with our children. And we are having to tell our stories to these devices primarily. And, that changes the way people decide what to spend, the way they plan their itinerary, the way they want to be connected online and offline, or maybe even have a vacation from being online. So I'm from the world of the people trying to see where the future's going. So Wired talks to the people, not just the tech and science people, but the people reinventing business models, the people reinventing creativity. And I got a bit obsessed with how innovation actually works and what innovation is and what it isn't, because every industry is desperately looking for it. And so I went to about 20 countries, from Peru to China to Estonia, to try and see examples of traditional successful industries that see maybe old business models under challenge, and they're finding new ways to build businesses. And so I think it's really quite valuable that you've got the Tech Alley startups here, because startups can take the risks that successful incumbent businesses find really hard, and they can play with things that may not work, and they can move quickly into a direction where the market may want them to move, and they're able to iterate quickly. And I suspect Athens is at the very early stages of becoming one of Europe's growing tech ecosystems. I come here a lot. I'm investing in early stage startups. I'm starting to look for opportunities here because you have talent, you have great technical education, and you have real problems that tech can solve. And I think you can learn from what's happening in another European city, in Barcelona, which again, as an industry, tourism is dominant. They have become a talent cluster for people using tech to solve problems in travel. There is an entire set of startups in the center of town working on future travel, helping take friction away, helping work out why you should pay for a 24-hour hotel stay when some people may just need a rest between planes. This is one of the Barcelona startups called By Hour. Extra incremental revenue for the hotels, convenience for the traveler. Travel Perk, again, turning the complexity of organizing business travel into a simplified multimodal experience. But travel as an industry can't relax because there are external challenges coming that aren't just about tech. A 16-year-old schoolgirl in Scandinavia has very quickly changed the way I get introduced at conferences. Last year, if I was coming here, my introduction would be about how many flights I took last time to see what the startups are doing. It's now slightly embarrassing to talk about flights. There's now a new word, a Swedish word that means flight shaming. And with trends where the people promoting the trends are very well networked, these emotions go from the edge to the center. And this is going to be a real challenge for people selling products that involve taking an airplane to get to. It's going to mean there's going to be growing demands for your hotel chain to show sustainable sourcing, to show exactly what products you're using to clean the windows. And transparency never goes away once that demand is there. And in terms of flight, it's going to be slightly complicated. Even yesterday, the British press were reporting political pressure to get rid of air miles and loyalty points because the incentive systems are wrong. And I was thinking that you actually have a great unfair advantage because once people are here, and even in ways of getting here, you can move them on the waters. But it's conditional on telling a new story, a story that is our ferries are going to be more and more sustainable because we're working on new technologies, we're investing in the future, and probably more important, we're listening. We're putting the 24-year-old on our company board to help us see what the new expectations are. So I'm going to kind of very quickly share 4 approaches where I think you do have an unfair advantage in this crazy, competitive international market. And I guess it all comes down partly to narrative, telling a different kind of story, but also to showing that you're not just talking the talk, you're creating systems, you're building products, you're testing markets to match those stories. And I guess the first of these opportunities is there is going to be lots more consumer money headed towards those destinations which are sustainable however we define it. So, the traditional headline offering in Greece can also be about the natural quality of life, the ways to get off the grid, the traditional places that have not been over-commercialized that give you this opportunity. And I guess also how we get there. Because the ferry industry which is a very analog, traditional industry, is just beginning to make serious investments in alternative biofuels, in hydrogen, and so on. And as you know, NASA is working on electric planes. It's where does this go after that? And I just think the aviation industry, where they have to make decisions based on 20-year projections, where you're buying that physical hardware, it's very hard to change attitudes. At the edge, I'm starting to see attitudes challenged.
Do you always have to meet face to face? Could you take a train instead? Could you contribute by compensating your CO2 emissions or packing light? We, the first commercial airline in the world, today kindly invite you, all travelers in the aviation industry, to join forces. To join us in making the world aware of our shared responsibility.
So this is KLM, an airline that's marketing itself by saying maybe you don't want to take aeroplanes. It reminds me of the Patagonia advertising campaign, "Don't buy this jacket." Because if the purpose of Patagonia is to help people going into the wilderness, they don't want in their manufacturing processes to encourage the waste that tarnishes the wilderness. And I think this is an opportunity for Greece to be, I guess, the eco-destination of the future. And it probably means rethinking, what a hotel room is. There's no point now having those cards that tell us 90% of people who stayed in this room recycled their towel. That's a given. It's where you take it from there. And I'm starting to see some fun experimentation into, what a room is. I was in Slovakia last week, and I saw the eco capsule, which is solar powered. There's wind. It collects rainwater, and you can put it pretty much anywhere. It's 80,000 euros at the moment. I might buy one when it comes down to about 50,000. But this is just one of a whole bunch of examples, which links to another opportunity. The affluent traveller is increasingly looking for the vacation, not simply be the package, the consumerized experience. They're looking for mental and physical wellness. And I can't think of an ecosystem in Europe that is naturally more suited to marketing wellness as part of the story you're telling. So it's not simply come to Greece and enjoy the Mediterranean diet. It's how you can sell not the package, not the vacation room, not the island break, but how you can sell the wellness retreat. Because people are less cost sensitive when you're selling an enhanced benefit. You're reframing what they're buying, not simply in terms of occupancy rates, in terms of turnover in the restaurant, but you're selling something that they're prepared to pay extra for because it's actually going to enhance their longer-term physical, mental, spiritual well-being. The third opportunity, as I kind of alluded to, is don't work alone. Build an ecosystem with the startups. Collaborate with them. They need your access to the market, your distribution. You need their ability to think and execute on very difficult, if not impossible, products. And this is Athens' moment. Not just Athens, Thessaloniki, but other parts of Greece. You are at that point where Berlin was 10 years ago, where Lisbon was 5 years ago, which is low rents, economically challenged, but strong technical education and very motivated, hybrid, cross-disciplinary, quite young teams. And if you give the right tax incentives, if you help create heroes of the people who are emerging, you can create a tech cluster here that in Lisbon now is accelerating recovery. And in fact, Berlin, because tech is now so established and a lot of the neighborhoods where tech is working, the rents have shot up. People are moving to other parts of Europe. and you're in a good place. There's already a lot of talent happening. The next step, I expect and I hope, will be a lot of the diaspora will come back and will bring the skills they've learned internationally to build these tech companies that can work with you, that can help reinvent what you're doing. But I guess we need regulators and governments and people with family offices to take a bit of a chance, to say, we're going to put capital in. We're going to create incentives that make it easy for you and me to make a high-risk investment. And I guess another and final opportunity is to do what not enough organizations in travel, in tourism are doing, which is to, as Google in its design thinking has learned, take every point of friction out of the experience before I, as the customer, have to think about it. Because getting to the destination and checking in and finding the tickets for the ferry and going from the airport, everything you do has friction, where it should really be like this. Whereas for many of us, it's like this. We're in a world of ubiquitous data. You know about me. You can ask me and take data from me about my goals and my desires. You have to think a bit like Uber. I don't want to take my credit card at the end of the journey. I want just to walk out and the device knows through GPS I've arrived. And it makes me think a bit about how they're starting to think in other places. For my book, I spent some time in Dubai. I met the head of the Future Foundation, which is trying to visualize where the United Arab Emirates goes in the next 20 years. And we were talking a bit about the experience of travel and going to the airport and turning up early and, worrying about lines and check-ins. And he said, we're thinking that the whole of Dubai becomes the airport terminal. You call a cab, you're in the back of the cab, you show your passport and boarding card. The driver, because they can biometrically confirm it's you, drives you straight to the plane. There's no waiting. Think of the WhatsApp experience. Why is this one of the most successful app products ever? I got to know the co-founders. This is Jan Koum. Just before they were sold to Facebook for $19 billion. And there were hundreds of messaging apps. Why did this one jump ahead and become the default outside China? Jan Koum had a note that had been on his desk for about 3 years that had been written by his co-founder Brian Acton, reminding him the whole time, no ads, no games, no gimmicks. We are here simply to get rid of the friction in people's communication. Just make it work without having any technical knowledge, make it cross-platform, make it quick and simple and reliable. Uptime has to be 99.997%, and it has to work if I'm on a Nokia and you're on a Microsoft phone, and there's no questions. And I talked to him about what they saw themselves doing. And essentially, it's getting out of the way and using advanced technologies to create simplicity. And yet I think of my experiences in an airport, in a hotel, in a public place, and people are putting barriers in my way the whole time. These little annoyances are going to put you at a disadvantage, whereas you know me. Increasingly, you know what I want. Why should your hotel limit my room service options to what your kitchen can prepare? Why shouldn't you become like an app store in yourself, like an API, like a lot of tech products, like Amazon Web Services? Why should I not be able to access through your platform 20 local restaurants that you will then bring their food up to my room? Why should I not, if you know I'm on a romantic weekend with my wife, you partner with a bunch of outside companies to offer me particular experiences and flowers and tickets to shows? That is what will differentiate you. That creates that personal, emotional connection. But I'm still struggling to find a place to plug in my phone to recharge it, because most rooms I go to haven't even been retrofitted with USB. It's these little things that you need to think about before I notice as a concern. So everybody's looking for this thing called innovation, but I think we mostly get it wrong. We celebrate in the media, I'm guilty of this as well, cool new stuff that involves tech as an amazing innovation without thinking, does this actually enhance people's life and build real value? And there's a big tech consumer fair in Las Vegas every January, the Consumer Electronics Show, which is probably the biggest tech fair in the world. And every year, people celebrate these extraordinary innovations that come out of it, including things that probably aren't going to change the world. This January, actually, there were a couple of things. If you like sharing with your social network how many beers you're having, there is the connected beer opener that sends notifications to your group. And, of course, if you want online notifications every time your cat is going to the toilet, the smart cat tray. These are not innovations. And sadly, sometimes some really serious money goes into these non-real innovations. There was a smart juicing machine. This company, Juicero, raised $120 million from investors, including, I hate to say, Google Ventures. And they sold the internet-connected, Bluetooth-enhanced, sensor-packed, $700 juicing machine. And then you had to buy these expensive sachets that it would then turn into amazing smoothies. Some journalists at Bloomberg experimented by squeezing the sachets with their hand and found you got just as good juice, and actually it was quicker. So when they wrote about this, sadly, Juicero no longer existed. It went out of business, having burned through 120 million. I keep seeing these kind of new innovations in things like drones. So I see lots of new drones. This company, ProDrone, claims to be the first drone with robot arms. And I'm thinking, okay, so what's the problem this is solving? Is this now the way to take your kids to school? Or because there's always a dark side to tech, is this the way to abduct kids from school? And it got to the stage where I couldn't tell if innovations I was seeing on social media were real innovations. You know, if you're those people who are too busy to stop on your Instagram to have lunch. I mean, I traced this actually. It was put out by a marketing agency, so I'm not sure it was that real. But the serious point is when big companies have a head of innovation, or they have a separate unit with startups, or they give people amazing job titles like Digital Sherpa or Chief Disruptive Growth Officer, and they don't actually change the core of the company. And that is innovation theatre. That's like you keep on with business as usual, even if you're not walking on solid ground, because gravity will come and catch you up. Because the exponential curve of tech advancement is constantly changing reality. Stuff that was expensive because of the Moore's law curve is getting towards free. And this trend is hitting all sorts of sectors. The falling cost of batteries, which means an electric car, a battery that at the start of the decade was $1,000 is heading towards $70. Solar, every sector is having to rethink. So what do we do? How do we optimize our companies, our organizations, to be nimble and be able to change as these tech changes are going to hit us? So I'm going to give you a few things I noticed whilst traveling for my book. It's called Non-Bullshit Innovation, because I wanted to find the real stuff that actually worked. And the first thing, hierarchies with the people at the top making the decisions, they inhibit innovation. You have to make everybody on your team, especially people talking to customers, heads of innovation individually. An example from a different industry, a games company in Helsinki in Finland. Ilkka Pananen runs probably Europe's most successful games company called Supercell. that makes games like this. He talks about wanting to be the world's least powerful CEO. He wants to hire talented people, let them decide how they work. If you don't like the project you're working on, you will go and move to a different team, because it's all about getting the best people, making them feel they're going to grow and learn from each other. I went to see a bunch of them there. One of them had been leading a team of 10 expensive games developers for a year, and they just weren't getting the response in the tests. So they all went for a sauna together, because they do that in Finland, and he decided, after conversations with them, they're going to cancel it. He sent a message to the whole company, and they didn't tell the boss, because the boss wasn't in the office at that time, but that's how he wanted it. Use the data that maybe is lying around that you haven't used. Airlines are, hard businesses to run. You don't control your fuel cost. You're competing against the low-cost travelers and carriers. You give the online travel agencies a chunk of your revenues. Qantas in Australia did something a bit different. They realized they had an especially popular loyalty program, an asset that their competition didn't have. Half of the population of Australia is in the Qantas loyalty program, and it's points you earn going to the supermarket, going to the dry cleaners, and you can spend them on concerts and shoes. They have a team at head office behind Sydney Airport, 150 people, not from airlines, but from engineers and ethnographers and designers, prototyping new kind of businesses based on the data they're getting from their loyalty customers. They've created a life insurance business, a health insurance business, a food and drink club, a golf club, credit cards, foreign currency cards. Last year, the revenues from these businesses, based on knowing the data of what people want, was about 30% of the profits of the entire group, which protects. So, data is useful. We're increasingly happy as consumers if you explain it correctly to give our biometric data. How can you use all sorts of other data we're giving you? And I don't mean make me give you my email when I check into the hotel so you can then send me marketing material. I mean really understand, with my consent, what I want, who I am. We sell products, but maybe we should increasingly think about selling services, because that is easier to differentiate us. And all sorts of industries are facing this. There's a bookshop in the most expensive Monopoly Square in London, in Mayfair, which has been there since the 1930s, and they were losing money. You can't compete selling books with Amazon. But this bookshop, Hayward Hill, had a new boss, a new owner, about 6 years ago, and he thought, well, if we can't compete selling books, maybe we can compete curating collections of books, selling a service where our experts in the shop read lots of books and then recommend them to you. So they started doing private library collections. The first customer wanted 3,000 books on modernist art for her Swiss mountain chalet, and they charged her 600,000 euros. They're now making a nice amount of money. They also do subscriptions. They will get to know you as a customer, and each month, wherever you are in the world, they will send gift-wrapped a book that they've chosen for you, and they charge quite a lot, 400, 500, 600 euros a year. And they've got thousands of people now paying for this. They are now a very comfortable bookshop because they reframed how they think of what a bookshop is. Don't work alone. Build an ecosystem where there's mutual benefit with other organizations, both people in the room, people in that room, and people you haven't yet met. Because you're being caught in a battle to the bottom on price. I can go to online agencies and find the cheapest way to book what you're offering. So how can you collaborate with others to offer me enhanced reasons to go to you directly? Here's an example from a very competitive world. In China, Lei Jun created a business called Xiaomi that makes very high-end phones at a very low price. They make no margins on the phones, and they've often been accused of ripping off Apple and then doing cheaper versions of Apple phones, and I won't even comment on the design of the Xiaomi stores. But what's really clever is they built an ecosystem with hundreds of startups making hardware. They put a little bit of investment money in, and then they distribute the products with their brand on. So the best-selling air purifier in China is Xiaomi, the best-selling battery pack is Xiaomi, and they don't make them. The startups make them. And they've sent the risk to the startup. The startup has to know what the customer wants today, otherwise it will die. But the startup has the benefit of the 300 million customers, and also Xiaomi doesn't make the stuff themselves because it would become a big bureaucracy and it would never make decisions. We actually put him on the cover of Wired saying it's time to copy China. One or two more. This is one you can learn from Google as well as others. Bring diverse thinking into your organization. Cognitive diversity, not just gender diversity, not just ethnic diversity, but different mindsets. And I went to see for the book Google X, the moonshot lab that's trying to invent the self-driving car, the business that uses balloons in the stratosphere to deliver internet connectivity. They've delivered a drone business. They're constantly trying to prototype new businesses that could affect billions of people and become hugely valuable. And they're all about putting not just the engineers in the team, but the ballet dancer, the expert in origami. Kathy Hannon was running marketing for one of the products, and she was obsessed with carbon-neutral fuel. Could you create a carbon-neutral fuel out of seawater? She wasn't an expert, but they gave her a little bit of cash to start experimenting. She put together a team, and she found that scientifically you could take the carbon and hydrogen out of seawater and turn it into a fuel. She worked on this for 2 years. The other thing they want is psychological safety, so anybody can propose an unreasonable idea. But they also measure everything, so you have to have a metric at the beginning of every process, and if you don't meet it, they'll kill the project. They made it work. It was $1,000 a gallon, then it became $100 a gallon, then it became $15 a gallon, and after 2 years she goes to the boss and says, it's going to take longer getting to $5 or $6 a gallon, which is our metric, and cost more than we planned, so we're going to kill the project now. And the boss was surprised, but they all got a cash bonus for living according to the rules and killing their baby. So a lot of their products haven't necessarily made it as intended, but this one alone is probably going to be a $100 billion business. And finally, tech is out there. Don't let somebody else play with it before you have. You know, every kind of business. There's a fertilizer business that's just done something very cool with tech. In Norway, this company, Yara, had a problem getting fertilizer from the factory to the port. So it invested $40 million building the world's first autonomous electric cargo ship to save 40,000, 50,000 trucks. It did a little announcement with a model 2 years ago, and suddenly lots of other companies in Norway are saying, can we pay you to use your electric cargo ship because we have the same problem? So by being there early, by investing in the tech, perhaps they have a very valuable new business line. So I'm going to leave you with the certainty that as human beings, we're in denial about these technologies. We'll say it's stupid, we'll dismiss it. That first time you are in the autonomous car, it's not going to make sense.
I'm scared. Oh, there's cars coming. Oh, there's cars. Ah! Bill, just put me back from me control it.
So this guy, Bill Rimmer, puts his mother in his Tesla and switches it to autonomous mode.
Oh, where's it going?
But you know, 2 weeks later, it's just going to be another way to go and play cards with her friends. So I apologize that you're all flawed human beings, but keep innovating. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Maybe one question for you before I let you go. You wrote a book, correct?
Yes.
And the book is out? People can already
that
read
would be
all about
lovely.
that?
Yeah, Penguin published a book about my adventures in search of innovation in the summer, and it's not yet published in Greek, but it's on Amazon and Kindles and audio, and I'm not very good at selling, am I?
It's fine. People can. You said it yourself. You're going to use tech, and you're going to look for his name inside his book. Guys, give a big round of applause to David once more.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much.